Greetings and blessings, blessings and greetings. Blessed souls and we're alive because we want to stay alive. In Torah Chaim, instructions of life, Torah Chesed, instructions of mercy. I should say instructions of kindness, Torah Rachamim, instructions of mercy. This is the third installment of the state of education versus the faithful shepherd, that it should not seem as a contradiction to fuse together a seminal work, a master's degree paper that was written by 7 extremely bright and courageous individuals: Almi Ibeta, Robert Garcia, Guadalupe Guerrero, Bet Chiviano Narvaez, Latoya Walker, and Shimon Warrenker. And again, I apologize to all of you if I pronounced one of your names incorrectly. This was a paper that was submitted to Professor Dr. Richard Elmore, January 12th, 2009, at the New American Academy at Harvard University. Before we do get into that little teaching and then fusing it together right now with a tidbit from a teaching from the Lubovitcher Rebbe on the 7 Noahide commandments, 7 axiomatic commandments to connect any one of the blessed inhabitants of the world, all of us blessed with a divine image. Just go see brightest, Genesis chapter 1 verse 27, and to see later in Genesis chapter 9 verse 6 that we shouldn't squander divine image by shedding the blood of another person bearing that divine image. So the Rebbe here in this talk talked about the idea that yes, there are in fact difficulties in the world that each of us have to encounter. And however, the fact that these difficulties are surrounding the person demonstrates that a person has been blessed and anointed with a greater potential, enabled for him or her to overcome those difficulties, such as this. And this is straightforward because there is a teaching from the Midrash, Numbers Rabbah, chapter 12, verse 3. The rule is that I, alluding to the Most High, only ask of them, meaning the Jewish people, according to their ability. And therefore, if we have been given that instruction for our Torah Shabbat, our oral Torah tradition, blessed souls, so we kindly invite all inhabitants of the world to realize that the tests that they have in life, and no one's going to diminish the severity of some tests that some people have, because some people have very severe tests more than other people have. There's levels of severity. What I'm trying to say, that we should understand there's a simple dictate that a person would not demand from a machine that he made more than what the machine can do. So therefore, we are not being asked to do more than what we are capable of doing. So when we see when a particular person, and these individuals that I mentioned before, with their graduate work paper, were granted the certain powers, and I, as I understand from one of the participants in that seminal work, that there were difficulties. However, each one was granted unique powers from above in order for him or her to fulfill this mission. That so now that I should have the leisurely opportunity. I say leisurely because I didn't toil in this paperwork, this paper that they put together, in order to share it with you, blessed souls. So that little work, and so to speak, that academic bubble, Harvard University, one of the best schools in the country, no one's going to argue that, in order that their work and their ideas should spread out into the world for all of us on a street level as activists, because that's all I am, is just a humble, service-based Torah, neighborly Torah activist, to share with these ideas. So last week we mentioned that there were basically 7 parts to this paper. So now in parts 2 and 3, which basically is referring to the second, the instruction that moves away from coercion and apathy to one that fosters commitment through informed judgment, the how of education, and third, the breaking of the university education complex in order to move towards depth in curriculum and assessment, the what of education. So going a little further into this paper, blessed souls, in parts 2 and 3, which I just mentioned now, we discussed the educational core and content before we discuss the structure of the school design in part 4. The reason is that often in education, the structures are placed before the practice, and we want to ensure that the structures are serving the practice of teaching and learning. Thus, the structures are a consequence of the how and the what of teaching and learning. And then part 5 focuses on the power of teachers first, and then in part 6 culminates the power development of our students. This is a very interesting point, blessed souls. Sometimes ideas, theories, become put into place without being nurtured in the fertile soil of practical experience. So although the idea may look good on paper, and the idea is put into practice, however, there can be a lot of, how should we say, fallout. And sometimes that fallout can be spiritually radioactive and infecting people in a way that they get stigmatized by that idea implemented by another person or another think tank without the full ramifications, because the matter before it was brought to fruition in the most positive sense was implemented without figuring out, well, what about in this case scenario or that case scenario? It could kind of puncture holes in the idea, but yet people push forth ideas. And unfortunately, in the educational system, ideas have been pushed forth in the last 200 years, as this paper, I think, is going to eventually illuminate us with, which were designed to actually isolate and intimidate the student instead of making education a more alluring process, a more elevating process. I mean, let's face it, blessed souls. I mean, I'm a parent, maybe some of you are a parent. When's the last time that your child got up in the morning and said, I can't wait to get up to school? Well, most of our children can't wait till they get out to the park and play. But if education can be designed in such a way that the children can feel that the best way they can spend their day is actually in school, and everything else is to strengthen their academic efforts in order to become more productive members of society, what would happen? Probably more good things than the negativities, unfortunately, we see from our current worldly education. I'm not trying to criticize anyone's system, but still we see that most forms of education are doctrinal as opposed to combining the best of linear and exponential thinking and educating the student to realize to think in a straight line is not a contradiction to think in an exponential fashion, and a child who is being encouraged to think exponentially or transcendentally should not seem as a contradiction to think in a linear fashion. With that being said, blessed souls, I'm just going to end off on this note here that this idea, taking again a thought from the Lubovitcher Rebbe, that the idea of the faithful shepherd is that Moshe Rabbeinu in the nation of Israel's consciousness and superconsciousness represents a sort of dispersion of higher level consciousness of direct connection to the Most High. And in each generation there are leaders who emulate to some small extent that dispersion of that original Mosaic approach and how to approach the Most High, not only for the nation of Israel, but also for all the inhabitants of the world. And one of the ways that we see that these transmissions carried over from generation to generation, those who have assumed that leadership, not necessarily of their own picking or choosing or even liking, is because they exemplified that same selflessness that the mighty Moses, the Levite prophet, exemplified. So this is something for those people who are considering, meditating on the whole idea of becoming leaders. How selfless are they going to be? At the same time, too, this is a very important point, blessed souls. How are they going to integrate this idea of selfness for the greater behalf, at the same time, too, not undermining their own personal development? That means in their own personal relations with everyone else, in their family and friends and inner circle community that they might be dwelling in. Those is good signing off. Look, we're trying to pack a lot of things into a small little video with our humble efforts, so I hope you can think about things, meditate about these things. Comments, questions, concerns, always welcome. Ahava chad, one love. Gorela chad, one destiny. The Kulana for all us, in a peaceful and pleasant way, right now, but Baruch Hashem Yisrael, with the blessings of the Most High.